Greetings, dysfunctionals. It is I, Dr. Ernesto, coming to you once again on that reality dysfunction onda. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Anita Fernandez about ethnic studies, the epic legal battle over Mexican-American studies in Tucson, the Xicanx Institute for Teaching and Organizing, known as XITO, where she and her colleagues are training the next generation of K-12 ethnic studies teachers in culturally relevant curriculum as we push into the 21st century. Anita, thanks for being here. Maybe we could start by you telling us a bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Fernandez. Well, currently I am the assistant dean at Prescott College, and I'm overseeing Prescott College Tucson. So we have a centro here in Tucson that is a satellite campus or sort of a field station for the college. And currently we have a K-20 campus, Changemaker campus, that we are leasing out space on and working together with two other institutions. So we're working with Xicanx Academy, which is a K-8 school, and then Changemaker High School, which is 9 through 12. And we are building a K through 20 or kinder through PhD pathway, predominantly for Xicanx Latinx youth, to provide them opportunities to access higher education more affordably, and also to prepare students with culturally responsive, sustaining, rehumanizing kind of pedagogy that we know works with this population of students. So I work at Prescott College, but I also direct XITO as well.
Okay. And so just to kind of talk a little bit more about Changemaker, I mean, I've been to the campus, and just in case anybody's wondering, yes, I am interviewing a number of my colleagues, mostly because they're doing extraordinary work in the communities where they're located at. So there is some nepotism that's happening on this podcast, but hey, let's talk a little bit more just about Changemaker, like, and how that got started, because I think the work that you guys are doing there is pretty incredible.
Yeah. So Changemaker High School is it's their campus that we're on here. It's 10 acres. We've only built on 3 of the acres. And so the high school is a public charter school, and they focus on social justice, environmental justice, sustainability. And so I've worked with Luis Perales, who's the head of the school, for a long time before the school started, in his community organizing work with Quiere Libertad, and also worked with Xicanx, with Balti Garcia, down in Nogales. And so the 3 of us have had a long time relationship working together. And so we've always wanted to, in some way, formalize the relationship between the 3 schools. And so this was an opportunity to all of us move in together, so to speak, and to really engage in the work together, working with the chiquititos in kindergarten all the way through the grades. And so the vision, we've just started this project, the K-20 project, but the vision is that we'll have these cross-generational or cross-age experiences for the youth, along with, field work and a lot of the environmental justice work that's going on here, engaging with the school in Nogales, and focusing, on this culturally sustaining pedagogy that we know works. And so it's an opportunity for us to be this professional development sort of model school. And so we have 3 tracks that we're focusing on. We're focusing on the decolonizing culturally responsive teaching, but we're also focused on community organizing and then environmental justice. And so those 3 sorts of tracks are what we want to become a hub for here at Changemaker. We want to train up the youth so that when they're ready to launch onto college or whatever they choose to do after high school, that those are, the 3 areas that they're going to focus in on. We'd love for them to go to Prescott College, because those are 3 areas that we have at PC. Most importantly, we just want to really help build the next generation of RAZA youth to move into these spaces and sort of reclaim those spaces that have been, especially the environmental space, that has been so white in the past.
Yeah.
Really giving these young folks an opportunity to be at that table, or actually to build their own table.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's good, to build their own table. So as you were talking about this, I mean, I've heard you say it a couple of times, culturally relevant, culturally sustaining curriculum or pedagogy. Do you think you could talk a little bit about exactly what that means?
Yeah, so we actually don't say culturally, or I don't. In XITO, we really use more culturally responsive or culturally sustaining.
Okay.
And the reason being that the pedagogy, when we talk about culturally responsive, it's about centering our curriculum around the lives of our students, right? So that every young person sees themselves, sees their ancestors, hears their histories as a way of, reclaiming the educational space, and also helping the students to like build their academic identity, where in traditional schools and traditional curriculum, they are really marginalized and minoritized, and are taught to see themselves as deficient in different ways, or deficit. And so so that's sort of the culturally responsive part. And then culturally sustaining is really looking at how do we sustain some of the practices and ways of knowing and ways of learning that have traditionally been a part of, in this case, RAZA folks. How do we bring back those traditions and embed them into not just into the curriculum, but into just the way we move through school, the way that we assess people, the way that we lead as administrators, how we engage in the community. So that's the culturally responsive part, or sustaining part.
And when you say traditions, you're talking about like indigenous traditions.
Yeah, so specifically here's like the Mexica indigenous epistemology that was used in the MAS program that you know well, like with the Nahuatl and those guiding principles.
Okay. I was talking the other day with one of your teachers there, Oscar Medina,
Mm-hmm.
and we started talking a little bit about the Nahuatl. I think that it's very interesting in terms of thinking about it as a way of systematizing knowledge, right? How do the kids react to that when you start laying it out to them for the first time? I mean, because it's for them, it's a whole new paradigm, having grown up in settler colonial society. And like you were just saying, experiencing for pretty much their entire lives, the degradation of their own history, or it might not even be degradation, just the complete absence of anything that validates themselves as young brown kids.
It really varies. So we're seeing, because XITO is just starting to really embed that work in Changemaker, even though they were already doing some of it.
Yeah.
And like really teaching the teachers how to operationalize the Nahuatl, like what does that look like in practice? And so you'll see, we have an opening ceremonia every morning. And so just that practice of literally getting young people into a circle and acknowledging the four directions and having sage and the concha and all those pieces, they're really uncomfortable, right? They're like, why are we standing in a circle? Like, what are you talking about, miss? Like, why do that sage stinks? What's going on? And so seriously, that was 5 weeks ago. And yesterday we were out there and
like, we're going to make Mexicans out of you yet, right?
Yeah. There's some young people that you can tell they're really like, this feels familiar. There's something familiar about this. I don't know why, because I've never done this. And then there's others that are still like, this is some Indian crazy shit. Like, I don't know what we're doing here or why we're doing this.
Brujeria.
Right. Yeah, right. I think that the humanizing piece, that isn't these big words like Tetzcalipoca and all these other things, but just the way the behaviors, like having high behavioral expectation of the youth, and then also trying to create a humanizing space, they feel that. Like that's, I think, what pulls them in to then be like, okay, now I'm willing to maybe check this out and see how does this relate to my cultura, my ancestors. It's also interesting to look at the youth that aren't RAZA here, which there aren't very many, but there are, some white students, some Black students, and mostly African refugee students.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and so thinking about how this isn't just about tying into your own cultura, but it's also just a humanizing methodology, right? It's about these practices and elements that are just human. Yeah, some students are really into it, and some students are still not really clear what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, that's always been my experience with other people throughout the years, especially when you start talking to other Chicanos about indigeneity. You know,
Hmm.
and they're just like, yo, that's no. And it's and that was my notifications. We'll see if that's me. And that was my other one.
Slick.
Oh, that's nice. Anyways, I think that's totally fascinating. I think the work that you guys are doing down there is really cool. It's one of the things that really drew me in the beginning several years ago to the work that was happening around defending the Mexican American Studies program in Tucson, was because once you started to look at the statistics about the success of the program, right, it just became really clear that there was something different that was happening there.
Yeah.
The thing that really blew me away was when they showed us the math scores, and they were showing how the students who were involved in the MAS program were scoring higher than all the other students in the math scores too. And at first I was like, well, okay. And they said, but yeah, but we don't teach math.
Hmm.
And I was like, I get it now. Yeah. And so I think that it's really interesting in the way that it disrupts this narrative, this deficiency narrative that you were talking about earlier,
Hmm.
and really flips it and says, no, deficiency in the beginning or through this whole process really has to do in some ways with a lack of self-awareness, right? Like our own ability to actually be a part of history, to see the things that are happening around us and realize that our community plays a part and that we have an important role here in this continent. I've been very encouraged in watching students in the way that it turns them around, because I always think to myself, man, I didn't learn any of this until I was in college, right? What if I had started learning this when I was, in kindergarten and
Yeah.
then all the way through a PhD program? I mean, what a disruption to a settler colonial paradigm that would be. I mean, you just have people who are just like, no, that's actually not the way it is. This is the way that it is. And so, yeah, super important. Anita, I know that you've been extremely involved with the MAS program for a very long time now, but I was hoping that you could talk with the listeners. I think most people who listen to this podcast are at least familiar with the struggle that happened in Tucson after Arizona House Bill 2281 outlawed the teaching of Mexican American studies in the state of Arizona. And they're familiar that happened. They've seen the documentary, maybe a lot of them anyways, Precious Knowledge. Maybe some of them haven't seen it. But there's a huge legal battle that happens as a result of that. And I know that you were very much involved in that. I was wondering if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit and where things are at right now. Yeah, with that legal struggle.
Okay, so where we are with the legal struggle. So as of now, the law has been struck down. So after 2010, when 2281 passed, and then 2012, TUSD eliminated the program. Yeah, Judge Wallace Tashima came back after the teachers, after the teachers filed an appeal. Judge Tashima came back and actually found that the law was constitutional, which was a huge disappointment, especially because Tashima had, overseen other civil rights cases. His family was interred in Japanese internment camps, so we really had hope that he would find this law unconstitutional. So the case continued and actually went on to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit judges ruled that the law was actually written based in racial animus, or based with racial animus. So the way that it works is they bump it back down to the Arizona federal court. And 2 summers ago, we had a trial here. So which Judge Tashima was the judge overseeing that trial. So that whole episode, that trial was like, I hope somebody makes a movie about that someday, because it was all the cast of characters: Tom Horn, John Huppenthal, Sean Arce, Curtis Acosta, everyone. Nolan was, literally on the stand. So it was Chicano scholars and organizers and activists actually defending Chicano history on the stand. It was really intense. And so And Horn and Huppenthal, you know, just getting up on the stand and saying the same things that they've always said, which was pretty remarkable. So the judge came down and found it on our side and found that the law was indeed written based on racial animus and written specifically to advantage Huppenthal and Horn's political campaigns.
Whoa.
So that was a big piece in there, that it was written with that intent specifically for them to get reelected.
Did he make that a part of his ruling?
Yeah.
Oh, snap. That hurts. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a huge victory for us. Really interesting though is, you know, on an aside, a lot of people don't know about that victory. And there wasn't a big celebration here in Tucson. It wasn't like there was much recognition for it. Nationally, there was, you know, our allies nationally who all came to the court recognized it, but it's just been an interesting thing to watch. So as of now, technically it is legal to teach what they were saying was illegal, but it's up to the school district whether they want to bring back the Mexican American Studies program, which they have not.
Yeah, they haven't done that, right?
They have not, because they have the culturally responsive curriculum program in its place. And they, you know, from their perspective, they're doing that work. They're doing the work. And so, but they could legally bring it back. And so that's where we are. I think the most exciting part, though, is that for us, like at XITO, it's not about the program ever coming back to TUSD.
Right.
It's about the precedence that ruling has set. And it's actually already been used. The Trump Muslim ban, it was used as precedence in that case. It's been used in one of the DACA cases recently. So already we're seeing that ruling being used for the folks that we were hoping that it would be used for. And as ethnic studies spreads now across the country, I think that, you know, that's obviously going to be a lot of pushback. And now we have this court case that will help with that.
That's incredible. That's really the victory.
It really is.
Wow, that's really something. That's good. So let's talk a little bit about the spread of ethnic studies. I mean, it's been interesting for me to watch it, you know, as somebody who teaches ethnic studies on the university level. I've told my students a number of times that I actually think one of the best things that ever happened to Chicano studies in the long run was Tom Horn and John Huppenthal. It seemed to me, I don't think I'm wrong about this, that Chicano studies as a discipline was in somewhat of a decline over about a 10 or 15 year period. And, you know, with this attack through 2281, I mean, I saw an explosion of renewed interest and resistance across the country. And where I, at one point, was kind of thinking that laws like this were going to start passing all over the place, because they did try to pass a law like this in Michigan and a couple of other states, but they just didn't quite make it the way that they did here in Arizona. But now with this ruling, the one that you're talking about, it seems like the exact opposite is happening, and that ethnic studies programs are now required in like 19 or 20 states for high school graduation, which is great. Or is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Tucson, you know, unfortunately, all the damage that happened here became a springboard for a lot of not all of it, but a lot of the growth in ethnic studies across the country. I know that our colegas in Texas really feel that way, and folks in California and Washington, Oregon. That's a really good question. You know, is it? You know, the immediate response is, of course it is. The challenge is, do school districts know how to do this?
Right.
And do it in a way that is true ethnic studies.
Right.
So what we're seeing already is, as you can imagine, these corporate, flashy, you know, professional development organizations with high dollar tag on them are approaching the districts with this really watered down kind of multicultural ed program, and districts love it because it's not too political and it's not true ethnic studies, so it's very digestible for the superintendents.
Right.
So that's going to be the next battle, is getting all of us together, XITO and other organizations that are doing like critical ethnic studies, professional development, and trying to build solidarity amongst those groups so that we can be the ones at the forefront of doing that training. Because there's just not enough. There's also not enough of us. There's not enough capacity. I get calls all the time from districts, and we have to say no because we just don't have the time or the resources to do all that training. So the other thing that I recently was at AERA, which is the big Educational Research Association conference, and some of the folks who had written the curriculum that's now under attack for the California Ethnic Studies requirement, they were talking about, is it really a good idea to hand over curriculum like this of any kind to statewide? Like, is that truly culturally responsive? Because it is statewide, and then also, is it really going to get done in the right way? And so there's a risk with that as well. And so now there's a big controversy about the curriculum that was written, as it got attacked by the right, which we expected, but now it got attacked by the California Jewish Caucus as being anti-Semitic and not teaching about the Holocaust enough. So that's really unfortunate. And so now the law to make ethnic studies officially a requirement in California, that has been put on the back burner for a year. And so it's off the table until the curriculum is rewritten. Yeah.
So that's what the holdup was then. I saw the headlines, but I didn't read any of the
Yeah, that's what the holdup was. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's important.
Yeah, and one interesting part of the critique too is that it's too jargony, which is like, language is shifting, and there are new words for what we do and who we are, and to call that jargon and to not want young people to learn that is, again, that colonizing settler colonial structure.
Is it the indigenous words that are jargony?
Indigenous words around gender identity, things like heteropatriarchy, words like that.
Is that jargon? I didn't realize that was jargon.
Right? Even like hegemony one, yeah. So.
It seems like a perfectly normal way to describe the world to me, heteropatriarchy. Yeah. Are there any questions? Yeah. Well, we can't have people speaking Indian in class. I mean,
no. And you and I have talked
years trying to stamp that out. Now all of a sudden, everybody's talking indigenous languages.
Right.
That's a fail.
Yeah.
So
the savage language has come back. Yes.
Savage tongue. Yeah. All right. Well, that's okay. That's really interesting. No, it really is. So you've mentioned XITO a couple of times. Tell us what you all do in XITO. Tell us how people can get a hold of you, how they can get involved.
So we are a educational consulting collective, and so we offer professional development to school districts, community colleges, different organizations based on the work from the Mexican American Studies program. So decolonizing and rehumanizing pedagogy. Basically, we have different institutes that are already set annually around the country. And then, so we have one in Tucson every summer, one in Napa in October, new one in Seattle in November, and then one in Eastern Washington in February. Oh, and one in Salinas also coming up now in September. And then throughout the year, we also get requests just from specific districts that want us to come out, or different community colleges. So we work a lot with folks in the Puente program, with their instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And basically our model is really about, rather than like going in for about a year, with a school, we really go in and do like a 2 or 3 day full immersion institute, and then try to come back, a couple of times. So that's the work we do. And then, we have teachers K-12, well, actually K-16 who come. We have administrators, a lot of school counselors, a lot of artists and organizers tend to come too. Folks that work with minoritized youth tend to come. And one of the things that also differentiates us is the indigenous epistemology for sure, but also there are some folks that do trainings like this, but they're only for teachers of color. which is important to have that space, but we get asked all the time, like, I'm a white teacher, can I come to your institute? And our philosophy is anyone who's working with our youth needs this training.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. Do you ever just tell them no?
No.
No, you know, when they ask that question,
Like, how
no.
white are you?
Yeah. How white are you?
Yeah, you're too white. No.
You should give them the paper
Get
sheet.
a little test up against
Yeah,
their
how they used to give us the brown paper bag test, you give them the white paper sheet test. So I think no, I think you're absolutely right. I think anybody that's working with our community, they need to be exposed to the ideas. They need to understand. I mean, because if they're, I mean, even I would say this, you know, as the son of a white mother, right? Like my mom is white.
Mhm.
That it's a mistake to think that white people can't help us on this journey. It just is. And if they're there and they're there intentionally, it's also, I think, a mistake to always think that, you know, there's some sort of like savior complex going on or something like that. I mean, you know, people really want to help sometimes. And I think it's really important for us to let people help if they want to help, you know. And so, yeah, no, that's cool. I think that's good. But at the same time, I agree. There have to be spaces for people that are, you know, that are for them. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but with the teaching force is still about 80% white nationally. So
there you go.
you know, and obviously the student body is getting more and more racially, ethnically diverse. So there's like this mismatch happening. And so we need white teachers to be trained up because they can be really successful, culturally sustaining teachers. They just need to do a lot of their own self-reflection and work.
Sure. Well, yeah, that would be super important. And there we go again. I'm just so popular. That's what it is. Everybody's sending me messages. Everybody wants to talk to me.
God.
All right. What else you want to talk about?
The only other thing I think I would say is that conversation you and I have had about the reality of the changing demographic, and in the work that we do, like at Prescott College, Changemaker, XITO, that's really the work that we need to not just be doing the work, but we need to be training others to do that work, because that's the reality of the future. And if the college or other institutions aren't preparing themselves to educate our communities, they're going to shut down, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to be successful. And so I know that we've talked about that, and we've been screaming it from the rooftops or whatever, trying to get people to listen. But I think that's a really important point there.
And just to bring it back around, when Anita says changing demographics, what she's actually specifically referring to is the dramatic decline of white high school graduates over the last decade. It was a little shocking, actually, how much that population in terms of them leaving high school. And it's not that they're failing to graduate, it's just that there's that many less of them. Inversely, the number of specifically Latino or Latinx or Chicano or Chicanx, it's inverse to the decline of white students. Our population is actually exploding. And so, like, one of the things I know that when Anita and I were undergraduates a while ago, that I'm not going to say how long ago, but when we were undergraduates a while ago, that one of the big issues on campus was access, right? Like we were always pushing the university for more access, for more recruitment, that type of thing. But that's not really the issue anymore. I mean, Latinos are one of the largest groups entering college campuses for the first time in the United States for like the last 4 or 5 years, right? So the issues shift, but they also become an issue of retention, because Latino students are coming into college, but how are the colleges retaining them?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think I think it all just goes back to what the sister was saying just a couple minutes ago about culturally sustaining pedagogy. I want to thank Dr. Fernandez for taking the time to talk with us today. The work she and her colleagues are doing in the classrooms of Tucson and through the XITO Institute are so important and vital to the mental, spiritual, and political well-being of our youth for the whole Chicanata. It is the type of deep political, cultural commitment that keeps the fires of resistance burning bright in our Xicanx indigenous communities. This is the Reality Dysfunction signing off. And until next time, stay alert, stay hydrated, and know where the exits are.